You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the March 9th workshop for the Michigan City Board of Public Works and Safety. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accessLaPorteCounty.org.
All right, are we ready? You ready, Chiefs?
Yep.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We will call this workshop to order. We are reviewing the police department's manual, and the time is 8:33, and I will turn it over to you, Chiefs. Or should we do attendance, or? Okay. We have a sign-in sheet going around, so.
All right. Yeah. Probably feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, right?
Part 1 of 4.
Yeah. Again, I think, obviously we've been working with Lexipol over the last essentially year and a half, updating our policies, right? Again, we haven't done this since 2018, so we felt it was important, obviously, to take the time. And we've stayed current on some state mandated policies, right? But we haven't done a total review of policies, so I think it was important for us that we recognize that, right, and make sure that we get our stuff that's current. One of the benefits of working with Lexipol is that they work with agencies throughout the country, so and they have a team of lawyers, right, that help with the language and case law and to help their policies and procedures stay current. So again, some of the ways, I would say traditionally, right, it's kind of been on us to make sure that we're current with case law, and we see prosecutor updates and whatnot. One thing, again, a benefit to working with Lexipol, if there's changes in case law, they automatically send us updates and say, hey, please review this. It is recommended, right? This becomes a new best practice and whatnot. So we're getting those, sent to us as opposed to us, right, recognizing that. So I think that's important for us to maintain checks and balances on that. So again, that's one of the benefits of working with Lexipol on this. In addition to that, they have a whole essential training database as well, which allows us to generate daily training bulletins, share roll call videos, regarding, again, case law, policies, procedures, and all that stuff. So again, partnering with them is a huge benefit. I think it'll help us stay current as we move forward, and again, in dealing with these things in a timely manner. I think, everything now, just from 2018, moves so much faster than it did, right, regarding case law, policies, procedures, and all of that. So I think it's important when there is, a new case law or an update needed, right, that we're able to adjust and or amend our policies as needed in a timely fashion, right? We can't wait 6-8 years to make updates. So again, I think just partnering with Lexipol is important for us. We foresee this obviously being a benefit for the department going forward. I would say to the board's leisure, I don't know how you want to tackle. Do you want to just field questions, concerns? I don't know that, so working with them, essentially Lexipol has taken all of our policies and procedures from essentially 2018, review them, essentially build them into the new format, and essentially we're using pre-existing content, and then they essentially send it back to us as like revised. Hey, here's our recommendations. So as the chiefs and our division of professional standards, we've spent the last essentially year and a half, right, combing through these recommendations from them. So essentially that's got us to where we're at today, where we feel like we have a good operating policies and procedures in which obviously we want to present to the board for final approval. Again, we have reviewed all of these personally, and so I think I don't know if we want to, again, it is upwards of 800 pages total, so again, I don't know that there's especially a need to touch on all of them. Again, some of these are a few new policies that we haven't had, when we start talking AI and things of that nature, right, when technology's changed dramatically over the last 6 years. So Again, I would say I'm at the board's leisure, and if we want, there's certain policies we want to touch on, or if there's, if we just want to start going through and naming them, and/or if there's any specific questions, we can do that as well.
Chief, when I looked at the agenda today, it was like chapters 1 through 5.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So could you maybe, for me, could you just maybe identify anything, I guess, in each chapter that's changed majorly? Identify any major changes in each chapter that,
Absolutely.
if that would kind of...
That helps.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good structure.
Again,
Just for the Board of Works, since I've been here, we haven't done a whole policy like this, so I was really kind of confused about how to present it. And so if this workshop works for you, or if you want to maybe change the format, you guys do whatever feels right. So like I said, it's just a lot of information, but I wanted to create some space for us to talk about it and how you want to see it.
Well, we have a retired chief of police,
Yeah.
so that's very helpful.
Correct.
again, just looking in chapter 1, right, which is the law enforcement role and authority, nothing has changed in chapter 1 whatsoever. Again, when essentially, right, we reviewed that, and again, that all that stuff is kind of just gives us our basic authority. Obviously names the chief as executive officer, and lists the manual and or the code of ethics. And again, nothing in that section has changed. Organization and administration, I think probably 204 is probably a specific one that is new.
What section is it?
I'm sorry, section, chapter 2.
The uniform training program.
Yeah, so the defensive tactics training program, again, this is one in which we have updated it. Sorry, I'm just scrolling to it so I have it. Sorry. Trying to pull it up here. Of course, it's got pulled up right now. I was thinking the defensive tactic plan. Maybe that's not the, it's just the state policy. You have the link there? Just touch on that a little bit. All right.
So there are certain policies that come straight from the Law Enforcement Academy, their training board. So as an example, the uniform statewide policy was effective last year. Just requires us to train a specific way regarding defensive tactics. This is the same for use of force, and then the pursuit policy, which we had already adopted anyway. It's just in this format. So just gives us a clear understanding what we need to do.
Yeah, and again, one of the things that they've added to this since its inception was a minimum of 4 hours of active hands-on participation in defensive tactics training. Again, we've done defensive tactics training biannually, right? I think it's every other year. Traditionally set forth by the Law Enforcement Training Board. Something that this statewide policy now enacts is that we actually have 4 hours of hands-on participation.
Is this what the academy recommends?
It's
Or
requires now, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's making sure, right, that we are staying current with hands-on, right? It's easy for us to rely on some of our tools and whatnot, but it's also important that we have the ability to maintain hands-on and use essentially the least amount of force necessary. So again, this makes sure that we're getting in on, we basically have MAT time, right, is what we call it, right? So that we have the hands-on type training. And again, this is set forth in, like Mr. Simmons indicated, right? This is required by the state that we do this. And there are some additional requirements with that. So if you're unable to, right, if you're on a modified duty or something like that, some type of physical restriction, you can seek a waiver, for 1 year from the academy, but we have to submit those in writing, right? So this year we had a female officer, right, was, during her pregnancy, right? So we submitted a waiver for her. She did not have to participate with in the hands-on training, but she did have to attend. Right, so it was important that she was in 10. So some of that stuff is laid out in here as well.
Chief, I have a question. Some of the subsections in the chapters are bold and not bold. Does that mean something like,
Do you have an example of?
I have page 47.
yeah,
I think that's one.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent throughout. Some are bold, some aren't bold, so I'm assuming that signified something.
Like responsibilities under Indiana law 208.5.2, and then the one right after it is bold.
You said 208.
Yeah, 208.
47.
Yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I noticed that too.
So the bottom of page 47.
She said 208.
It's actually 209.3 and 209.3.1.
I say just looking at that because as I'm scrolling down here, I think there's several sections that are that way.
Yeah, there are.
And what does it pertain to?
Just the titles,
No, I honestly just
just the formatting issue.
I think that's a formatting issue.
Okay.
Just looking at it because those are all just subsections of a particular title, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I apologize, we did not obviously catch that. But yeah, that's definitely a formatting issue. I don't, again, there's not one necessarily more important than the other, right? There are key, I think.
Yeah, I just was assuming that like maybe we modified it in some way and that signified something. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about, but yeah, I don't think to my knowledge, there's no reason for
Okay.
those sections and or subsections to be bold and or not bold. To me, they should all be standard across the board.
Thank you.
It's not anything to do with sections.
Yeah. So I would say moving forward to page probably 51, right? Use of force is obviously an important policy for us. Again, this is essentially the state mandated policy, right? Essentially put into our format. Again, if you've had the opportunity to review that, we've been operating on this policy since I think it was 2023 when this policy was in place. But again, it's just essentially under new formatting, which again, just when I talk about format, it just talks to like 300.1, right? Traditionally, that use of force was number, I don't remember, use of force is 26, I think, right now, currently, as our policy states, right? It just falls under policy number 26 right now, whereas opposed to this new format, it falls under the policy manual, chapter 3, general operations, and then obviously 300.1, or policy 300 being use of force. So again, this is the same policy in which we've been operating. Again, lays out.
Chief, what changed? I mean, you said since 2003, this is the policy.
Mhm.
What was, if I can ask, what was the policy? What changed about this policy in 2003 that was different prior? I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know what the change was in 2003.
Yeah, we don't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
This is all we've got.
So we had our own policy approved up until that point, and then once the state training board, law enforcement academy sends us a policy saying this is what you have to go by.
So this policy is more state.
It mirrors.
This is a state mandate, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, like our training requirement, right, that we have by the state, regarding
Okay.
defensive tactics,
Yeah.
right? The state essentially has this state mandated policy, right, in which we have to follow these guidelines. I think one of the, important sections of this is, like 302.1, right, a duty to intervene, right, whereas previously I don't believe that section was spelled out as specific as it is in there now, right, just essentially any officer present and observing a member other than a sworn officer using force that is clearly beyond that which is objectively reasonable under the circumstances shall, when in a position to do so, intervene to prevent, right, the use of unreasonable force. Right, that holds not only, right, the people directly involved in it, right, but the secondary people on scene, right? So that also requires us, right, if I show up to a scene and somebody's using, force that's not objectively reasonable for the situation, I have to step in and, hey, I'll take it from here, right,
Have you guys ever had that situation happen, and are your officers trained to intervene, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a constant training, right? We can, we talk about it. Obviously, it's part of our annual training, but then also using virtual, right? We have our virtual simulator training simulator that we have, and there's situations in which, right, we can obviously have additional personnel show up on that, right, and work those situations. Again, I think it's we have to consistently set forth that message that, right, we are obviously our brother's keepers as well. We talked about it. When something happens, right, when there's a use of force that's needed, we talk about, right, our officers ultimately, right, I don't want to say take it personally, right, but it becomes a personal interaction there, right? Somebody's forcibly resisting me, right? Their mindset may be that they're not, they're resisting, right, the outcome, right? They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to, be held accountable or whatnot, right? And our opposite side of that is, well, somebody, you've committed a crime, you must go to jail, right? So sometimes when somebody personally resists me, that becomes personal, right? And I think it's important that we do have, right, this duty to intervene, and, that's the way we preach it. It's like, remove that person from that, situation. Hey, I got it from here, let me take it, get them off of it, so we don't have the incidents in which we saw, up in Minnesota, which ultimately led to some of these state mandate requirements.
Do you guys track your use of force stats?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. That's something we do essentially monthly. All use of force incidences are reviewed by our command staff at our commanders meeting. And then, yeah, if
You said monthly?
monthly, yep. And then I think Chief Cooney just alluded to it. I think 302 in this policy talks about our use of force review board. Sorry, trying to get to a page 62, it looks like.
It sounds like a lot of the changes are just formatting, or instead of being 301, it's now 326 or vice versa.
Yeah.
Are there any substantive changes? Any actual? Is there any big news besides just the record keeping of getting it straightened out?
I would say this is a lot more in depth than what we had prior. There are a lot more policies that just kind of spell out what we need to be doing. The overall policies are all here, but then also what's nice about Lexipol is it gives us an opportunity to then have not only a policy manual, but then a procedure manual as well. So our policies in the past just laid out everything, where this can actually separate it, so we have that ability. In the system for Lexipol, we could go in, any officer can go in and search for any topic that they may want to cover. They can look at what they need to do, and then it can obviously transpire into the policy as well. There are documents we can attach. As an example, the use of force, we have a use of force form that needs to be filled out anytime you handcuff someone or use force, all that. So that form is there in the policy that leads to the procedure as well. So for your question, and I mean, we could go through all of them, but we've had, again, in general operations as examples, just reading through these, right, you have use of force, the review board, handcuffing and restraints now is its own policy, where that would have been in the same policy before. So it's just splitting it more into a more organized manner, and I think overall it's going to be good for us.
Now, on that use of force, is officers wearing cameras included in that?
That's gonna fall under our body camera policy,
Okay.
which would indicate, right, basically, I don't remember off the top of my head what Humbert, search for that, right? What number that was. But yeah, our body camera policy would then indicate, right, when essentially we should be having body cameras on, right, which is essentially with any interaction with the public, right, is body camera should be on, right? Again, going back to some of the stuff we've done over the couple of years to help relieve some of that human error on body cameras, right? We have our newer body cameras are like essentially geofence activated, right? They're in combination with our computer aided dispatch, our CAD system. So when dispatch enters a call and says, again, just different calls have different priorities, right? If it's just a well-being check, right? Our geofence may only be a quarter mile, right? So when officers essentially arrive in that geofence, right, cameras are automatically, I say automatically, right? There's still failures in technology, but those cameras turn on, right? And then if you have a serious, significant event, right, shooting, stabbing, officer involved, whatnot, then that geofence gets bigger, right? Now it's a mile plus out. So once they get within those geofences, now we're recording our arrivals, right, and stuff like that. So again, those are some I don't want to say fail safes, right, but some things that help us maintain and make sure those cameras are rolling when these types of incidences happen. So
are any of our policies out of alignment with the state's requirements? Are we doing anything different, or are we just aligning to current state requirements and cleaning up the format?
yeah, a lot of it is cleaning up the format, right? Is again, the state required policies, right? Our use of force, pursuit.
Those are word for word put in place, other than us obviously changing, for Michigan City Police Department, it's all what has to be there, so.
I'm assuming Lexipol also updated the code citations in Indiana code to make sure everything was, because I was looking through it and just double checking everything and it was accurate.
Yeah.
So again, you'll see throughout here several policies like Attorney LePage indicated, right? That it cites state IC codes and stuff like that. So again, as far as policies and procedures, there are the state mandates, but generally, right, those are set forth, in guidelines, whether it's from the Indiana associations of like chiefs of police or the international association chiefs of police. And there are some accredited agency or accreditations as well. And again, that's where essentially, right, each department formulates their own policies and procedures. They may be varied slightly, but again, I think that's one of the benefits to using Lexipol. Again, is that we're taking our pre-existing content and then essentially dumping that in here again with some updates. Again, nothing drastic, nothing because again, for the most part, we've had a good set of policies in which we operate. But again, it's just updating, right, the format. And then I think the ongoing, assistance from Lexipol and the updates, whether it's case law, that stuff, being able to do that timely, right, to obtain that information timely and then easily update is a great benefit, I think, for us moving forward. Again, another policy to touch on is 308, which is going to be vehicle pursuit. So I get the page number here. Looks like page 98. Again, when we look at this policy, this is, first essential, 308.2, right? The Law Enforcement Training Board has directed all Indiana law enforcement agencies, departments, and offices to adapt the Law Enforcement Training Board's uniform statewide policy and incorporate into these policies, procedures, rules, and other general orders of the agency, department, or office. again, this policy is to be used in conjunction with all relevant general orders, policies, procedures, and rules of the Michigan City Police Department. So again, this is one of those ones that is set forth by the state. Again, we've adapted, right, it to fit our format and our rules and policies and regulations here, which align with our state policy. Again, it defines, some specific things within that policy. Again, it even talks about, right, termination of a pursuit, right, when an officer is involved, either voluntarily stops pursuing or a vehicle, or is ordered to stop pursuing the vehicle and complies with, the procedures of termination within this policy.
The statewide policy.
Correct. And I think, one of the benefits, I'm trying to find the section on it so I can read it, supervisor responsibilities. 308.5, which is page 101. Again, where it talks about supervisor responsibilities when made aware of a vehicular pursuit, the appropriate supervisor shall monitor the incoming information, coordinate direct activities as needed, so that proper procedures are used, and shall have the discretion to terminate the pursuit. So again, subsection 1 there, immediately evaluate the reasonableness of the pursuit based on the totality of the circumstances. If it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and, there's a pursuit anywhere in town, there's probably a good chance, right, that our, what's is essentially, right, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? What do we know about this, right? Is it some traffic violation that we were stopping them for and they took off? Well, if that's all we have, then that's not worth the pursuit at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But if it's, a homicide suspect, in which we just observed or, have a positive identification on, that's, those are things that we have to weigh and, adjust, based on essentially the totality of those circumstances, right? Those are words in which we have to live by. So again, I think it's important, again, benefit for us is that we always have, right, there's always a supervisor on duty, always a shift commander, in which essentially is, removed from that situation, right? So they can take and look at our pursuits from a third party perspective and make those decisions and or terminate, right, or allow that pursuit to continue. So again, I think it's just important to point that out. Again, it lays out, again, use of force regarding that, and then it does talk about, right, let's see, pit maneuvers, right? Well, again, any officer may employ a pit maneuver against a pursuit vehicle to terminate a pursuit or prevent a pursuit vehicle from operation under the following conditions, right? So our policy allows pit maneuvers, but subsection 1 there, it says the officer has been trained and approved to conduct the pit maneuver. Well, we don't have anybody trained to do that, right? Because we're not doing that, right? We're not doing pit maneuvers in town here, right? So where our policy allows it, right, our training and our rules do not allow it. So again, there's again, I think that's just something that helps keep us current, and again, it allows us, if we ever get to the point where we think that we need to send people to training to do those things, we have the ability to do so. But again, it would be because they're qualified to do so, not because it's something they think they can do. So. Let's see.
Chief, there's a question.
Oh.
Chief, may I
Yeah,
ask
I'm
a
sorry.
question? Because I'm not really sure of the process here, but along the way, I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Should I wait until you're done and then go back?
No, if there's, I think if it's pertaining to a specific, let it rip, and I think.
Anything?
Yeah.
Well, then I have to go back to kind
Yeah.
of the beginning.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Not really, there's only a couple pages.
She printed it and she's got highlights, so.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the weekend reading, by the way.
At least it was gorgeous out. I read outside.
Just a quick question, and I'm all about protection of you and individuals and closing gaps.
Yep.
So when I read, it was just a question that came up under 202.7, the Emergency Operations Plan Review. It said that you are authorized or a designee can conduct a documented review of the emergency operation plans at least once every 2 years. Great, that's wonderful. I'm happy that you do that. Is there anybody that monitors that you do that? I know that sounds silly, but
Is there anybody that monitors that we evaluate our emergency operations plan?
yeah.
No.
With that being said, to piggyback off that, is there any schedule to reviewing these policies, or do you guys just
No, I mean, I think it's, it's,
I
here?
think Lexipol automatically alerts you, right?
yeah, regarding, right, policies and procedures and, and everything essentially that you have in your hands here, when you start talking, I think NIMS or, right, emergency, national incident
Yeah.
management system, right, let's say that would be an additional, right, type training, right, when we do, essentially, right, I would just give the example that we essentially just reviewed our active shooter response, right, which would be an incident management thing. We did, was it over fall break? We had
Training at the high school.
training out at the Michigan City High School, right, in which we, did an active shooter simulation, right, in which then coordinates our incident management response, right? So that's formulating our staging area, right? Our incident command, our public information, right? So again, I think those are just constant trainings in which we're always reviewing and trying to, stay current with.
Yeah, and that was a multi-department.
Right, that was a multi-jurisdictional, right? So we had police, fire, EMS, right? If we had one of those incidences, all those people would be involved. So us taking, I think, an active role in those types of trainings and continuing our education on those ends
Doesn't
are
your
what.
training officer stay abreast as to emergency operation planning review
Yeah.
and set up periodic roundtables so you both?
And again, that's essentially what, we're actually doing it right now in our current in-service class, right, is essentially a roundtable, right? So people understand their roles and responsibilities. It breaks it down to the first 4 people on scene are a contact team. The 5th person, all of a sudden, he's a staging person. And then the next supervisor on scene is, would.
Now, is this an annual? So we stay abreast?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it's an annual continuing thing. I think it's, it has to be at least biannual, right? When we fall into our in-service training, we have state requirements.
And that's fine.
Right, that we have to hit every month, or I'm sorry, it's usually every year or every other year. And then along with those state mandates, we also fill in, things like this, right? The emergency operations. We work with the Youth Services Bureau, right? Our SART team. There's a bunch of other different trainings that aren't state mandated, but then we're also trying to stay current with, right? So I think, again, these are important that our training coordinator and our training team stays current on those things, so again, we can train the department.
Okay, thank you. Number 203.4.3. Sorry. It says if an officer or reserve officer fails to complete the required hours of in-service training, blah, 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 they should advise the training coordinator. It doesn't, I have a question as to why they're the ones reporting. Isn't that tracked and somebody should already know if they do that?
Yeah, and again, sorry, I was reading that to you. If an officer or reserve officer fails to complete the required hours of in-service. So again, let's say part of this stuff is, when it falls under, state, is that state statute? No, it's, Yeah, so state statute, right? Officers are required to report those hours of training. We, being, I would say, a larger, small department, have the benefit of having, a training secretary in which logs our hours for us. So when we get on CADIS, right, is the state, essentially, state tracking, right, of required hours, right? I don't remember what a CADIS stands for. Essentially, right, that's where Indiana law enforcement officers log their hours of training. As administration, we have access to that, right, along with our training coordinator and training secretary, so we can review all hours, right, current hours. But again, it is by law, all officers are required to self-report that. So again, we have the benefit of knowing, right, whereas some other small departments would have to self-report that and/or require themselves. Again, if there's a situation in which we know our officers haven't met the requirements, usually I think that's in October, we review that to make sure that we have met those requirements. And again, that's part of us conducting our in-service training annually, like we're doing it right now, is to make sure that we can hit those mandates, right? So if somebody misses our in-service training, they already know that we have to make up those hours. So again, where it doesn't specifically say, I know that it does say, right, it's a self-report thing, but that's a state law part of it. But again, the luxury for us is that
This is a big one because liability.
Right.
The city is responsible for that office.
Yeah, so it's important that, right, that we make sure and maintain that all of our officers have the required training and then some, right? We can't, again, unfortunately, right, there's departments across the state that just do the bare minimum, right? And that's not a category in which we want to fall in, nor will we fall in. We're always hitting the mandates, and then, right, it's what else can we do? Can we do the incident management? Can we add, right, Youth Services Bureau? Can we add juvenile law? There's other things, again, that aren't necessarily required for us, but there's time for us to learn. Always. So again, I think it's important that we're not just hitting the minimum. I don't think anybody within our department and or our community would expect us to just do the bare minimum. I think, we can speak from our work product that we're always going to continue to go above and beyond to produce essentially the best product, that we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you review and find that they may have not taken the training necessary, what are the consequences?
So again, and to my knowledge, we've never had anybody not meet those requirements, at least being in this position. The benefit that in which we have is that we generally have an instructor and or that can teach that person to meet those requirements. If they're not meeting those requirements, right, it ultimately could mean that they get decertified. Right, which means they would lose their police powers, right? If they're not maintaining those training or that mandated training, and that's not a situation in which we want any of our officers to fall under. But yeah, it is up to essentially decertification, and if you become decertified, I don't think there's a position for you within our department. So. Incentive in itself there to make sure that you maintain those.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Page 63. These are 63 and 64 are just some cleanup issues, I think. On page 63, under 304.4.2D, the first sentence reads, "The will determine whether the board." That's just a cleanup issue. I'm sure it's like the board will determine, that somebody will determine, they will determine.
304.
Page 63. Under D of that last section. The very first statement.
302.4.2. 302.4.2. D is in Dom. The what?
Sorry, I gotta go back up to see what board we're talking about here. So our review board, so our use of force review board. Yeah, yeah.
So it,
Should be the use of force review board.
okay.
302.42.
302.
It's, responsibilities. It's over here. Yeah, but it's section D. 302.42, section D.
Can I move on?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, 64. Page 64, next page. Under J and K, I think, let's see, the last sentence of J, if the concludes that discipline should be considered.
In the first sentence too.
Yeah, they shall. Yeah, it probably should be they shall.
And under K, I don't think the sentence was finished. Filed with the,
It'll be fine with that.
Conclusion. Mhm.
This is still the same section.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same section.
Yeah.
BJK.
Sorry, we're just taking notes, that way we can,
No, you're good.
we'll make changes, and that way I think we could probably quick reference these next time. You know, when we meet again, we'll make the changes and then resubmit them. Oh, it's good. Again, we've spent much of time reading these, so again, there's, fortunately, right,
It's blunt after.
we've become a little blinded after a while, so
absolutely.
it helps to have additional eyes on these, right? Essentially why we're here.
While we were talking about the use of force board, is that like, does the state of Indiana mandate who sits on this board, or is that a you guys thing?
That's something that we do, right? We have essentially set it up to our defensive tactics instructors, right? So essentially the ones that have attended, right, instructor development, they've attended, become an instructor in essentially defensive tactics, right? So we're talking about essentially use of force, right? They're our taser trainers, our physical tactics, our hands-on type trainers. So essentially, there's 3 of them that meet monthly, right, prior to our commanders meeting, right, to review each incident or use of force specifically. And essentially, right, then when we come to our commanders meeting, we have the commanders from each shift, each division, and then the instructors, or essentially our use of force review board, essentially brings their information and their findings to us. We then obviously, as the command staff, can review any videos or anything needed as well, and then ultimately, right.
So,
Essentially, the board makes, the following findings, right? If you see there in section.
so with the makeup of it, is there a reason why there's not a regular civilian, not a police officer on that board, or like, is that something like a council liaison could,
Otherwise, it's self-police.
yeah,
Member of the public is what I was thinking.
yeah. Like an appointment from the council or the mayor,
Member of the Police Civil Service Board.
or just a civilian
Right.
liaison to sit in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's departments out there that currently do that. It's not something, again, traditionally we've ever done. I think, we would be up for that process, but I think it's, again, whether it's,
But this board is more internal.
This is internal.
Yeah.
This
Yes,
is not
for this
like
policy.
when
Yeah,
there's,
for this
when
policy.
if there was a allegation of use of force, this board is the board that would evaluate that. Or is it?
Like, it seems like more like a disciplinary
It
board.
is, right.
It sounds like this is a board that reviews use of force
Internally.
things, but if there was a lawsuit or something, there should be probably a mechanism beyond an internal review, shouldn't there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of HR violations with it, but
And
I do
given-
feel like having a member of the public.
And given the Police Civil Service Commission is, I'm trying to define what our duties are, but it's discipline and promotions. So that seems like a valid place for a member of the board to also be a
Just
member.
one
Yeah.
person.
Police commission should be involved in that or responsible for that. They're responsible for the hiring and firing of the department.
And
And
discipline.
these are all civilians, right? Are they,
No, these are all,
well, no, you have a choice too. You-
for this Police Civil Service
Civil,
Commission.
yes.
So yeah, there's a representation, from the mayor,
From the
from the
mayor,
council, and the FOP.
Department, yeah.
So, again, this particular
And-
board is more internal for review purposes,
Yes.
procedures for what you know, and just leading the department. That's just kind of one of the things that you created within, correct?
Well,
But keep in mind, if it goes to a disciplinary issue, it always could fall back then on the commission.
Right.
If it's tied.
and that's,
I get that.
that's what the
They're
police
supposed to do
commission consists of, that other
that other thing.
civilian part.
Okay, that works for me. I mean, I was just understanding that. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, I correlated to in my office, we have procedures and things we go over to maintain our operations, not necessarily because there was a complaint or allegation or whatever, just as a part of how you operate your office.
Right.
Okay, that's how it's correlated.
And again, if you the whole review board is laid out in here, right?
Yeah.
Under 302.4. Again, we can go through that specifically if you wanted. Again, it lays out, the Board of Commanders will review all use of force, firearm discharge, and vehicle pursuits incident by members of the Michigan City Police Department. Board of Commanders will meet at a minimum of once per month. Additional meetings shall be at the discretion of the chief. The use of force review board will convene when the use of force by a member results in very serious injury or death to another. Again, this is, it indicates in here, to review serious injury or death, but we review every incident, of force.
When they're referring to the board, it's police commission.
No, this one was,
I think it's great you have internal review of every use of force. That's just
wait a minute.
good practice. But if something comes up in that, let's call it the initial review, your monthly, that warrants, in your opinion, further
Should be considered to be
action, like a second review,
filed with.
is that room for to have a member of the public or the commission on it or something like that?
You want the rest of it to see.
It's hard to be a member of a board that's responsible for promotions and discipline if you're not privy to what's leading to the disciplinary matter. If you're just presented, well, I guess that's how court is, you're presented with.
And that's what I was
facts.
gonna say. So quite honestly, you'd have to look at it objectively, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's, that separation is needed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just want to see the juicy video.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, are we okay? I just was, me personally, and I know you'll explain this well, so it's just me understanding it, the process for the photographing of the CED discharges, I wasn't quite clear on pages 77 and 79 where it references who's actually responsible for that. It says an officer shall document, but, and that was under 305.6 documentation. number 1, and then under 305.8, supervisor responsibilities.
Let's see. Sorry, just looking up the policy here. So it was on page 70.
77 and 79 are the ones that I'm referring to. Which was 305.6 and 305.8.
Six.
And it may be perfectly clear,
So anytime we use a taser, right, and it's used in a manner to effectuate an arrest, the officer should be taking photographs of where the probes came in contact with that person.
the person
Just to
who fired the
Correct.
taser.
It doesn't, I mean, that's who should do them, but, you know, if they're busy with something else, another officer could do it as well. It's just basically stating that we need photos of where that person, you know, came in contact with those probes, basically. Just it's a documentation for us,
Sure.
you know.
I was just thinking, if I was the one who fired it, I don't know if I'd want to be thinking, oh, grab my camera and take a picture. I guess I should, but
It can be well after the fact. I mean, once we bring them to booking or, you know, you're in a safe place, you know, it doesn't have to be right at that moment.
Oh,
It
okay.
can be just within the next time that you're, you know, in the process of the arrest, you're going to take them up to our station or to the jail, and then you can do that then. So,
gotcha.
Where, yeah, more of a controlled
Yeah.
environment.
I thought it was at the scene.
No, it wouldn't have to be directly as, you know, after, you know, right as it just happened. No, it would be more in a controlled environment, you know, where.
After the fact?
After the fact, yeah.
So do those,
Just to show documentation either way, right? So if it was, you know, essentially, right, they usually leave a very minimal, you know, almost like just a pin poke of a hole, right? So we can show that there was no significant, right? The goal of that would be to show that there was no significant injury, and or the vice versa of that, where we could also show that the probe, you know, maybe hit a sensitive area, and there was, you know, maybe significant swelling and or, you know, bleeding or whatnot, right? So I think it's, you know, it's important to document either side of that.
And does anybody who carry a taser have to get tased?
No, they all do.
We do, yes, yeah, we require.
It's not required.
It's not required by taser, but we,
Anybody who
as a
carries a
department,
taser has to-
require that
Get
They have to
tased.
to get tased with a essentially a full shot, right? Where it's not, we just don't put the, you know, they got different ways in which you can do it, right? You can do alligator clips and stuff like that, where we actually require, like, you know, you take a shot from the taser.
They did it at our Citizens Police Academy as well.
Yeah, we should have that one.
You know, but I think it's important for our officers to know the effects of that, right? Because if somebody were to get a handle on my taser, I know that I would be incapacitated for, you know, a moment of time if that weapon was used against me, right? So the same thing when we start talking about pepper spray, right? You know, all the tools in which we handle, right? We should know the effects of those. So yeah, so that, you know, officer shall document. Then there was another part of that one you said as well?
oh, but then that answers, the supervisor then has to review that and make sure that's.
Correct.
It's.
So yeah, and then that falls under like our use of force report as well, right? So that would be ultimately reviewed then by the direct supervisor and then, you know, by our board as well.
Are there any changes that you guys are not happy with that are being mandated, or is everything copacetic with you?
Yeah, again, the mandated policies we already had established, so, you know, as I mentioned before, I think having the ability to change from just having everything in there all at once, where now we have the policy and the procedure with it, it's a lot better. I mean, we can review things quicker. It's not overburdened on, in the policy part of it. It's the how to do it is in the procedure, which is a lot better, I think. So.
I can see that.
So there's clearer guidance for the officers.
Yeah. And again, then, obviously using, an online database is much easier and efficient too, right? You'll see throughout some of these, there's hyperlinks, to the coinciding procedure, right? You might see the policy and then it's easy to go over to, as we get into the procedures manual, they coincide, right? So it's, 300, right, for use of force. Well, that's going to be 300 in the user, in the procedures manual as well. So it's easy to cross-reference and then again understand, the roles and responsibilities. Sorry, section 300 is quite the section if you didn't find out already. Just trying to scroll through there and see if there's any other specific policies. AI policy. This first five. Yeah, it's 341. Oh, yeah. What number was it? 341, you said. I'm missing it. Sorry. Again, most of this content, right, was just derived from our previous existing content. Again, there are some subsections in which Lexipol deemed best practices right across the country. So again, there will be some subsections added to that. I know in review mode, it clearly laid all of those out. Now I'm in looking mode. It doesn't necessarily identify those as specific, right? It just puts it at subsection A now instead of A like best practices. So essentially removes that. 344, isn't it? Yeah. So I think on page 258, which is generative artificial intelligence use. This is obviously a new one for us, right? We didn't have this back in 2018, so we reached out to the Indiana State Police to get their policy regarding AI, right? So, obviously, I think it's important.
Do you have the policy or the procedure?
Maybe I'm in the procedure. What am I at? Three, four. Am I wrong? Am I looking at the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Did you read that?
344.
That's the AI policy.
Right here. 341.
Seemed pretty.
41? That's 258.
That's
So
it.
it's in- Right. 26. Authorized use of AI. Did you say 258?
On page 215.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's what you signed. 250.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the policy.
340 something. 41?
341.
Something that we wanted to just make sure we were kind of ahead of the game with. Obviously, AI is out there, people are using it. We wanted to have something set up for what we expect from our officers. Obviously, we don't want to be putting sensitive information in a general chat or, the chat GTP or whatever that is. So this just gives us some guidance on obviously responsible, ethical, lawful use of AI by members of the police department. Again, I reached out to the state police and they already had one as well. So just kind of best practices of what to have with that.
Does the academy address that?
I don't know if they have addressed it yet. There are obviously Core Force, formerly Utility, is our body camera system. They're already implementing it. They have of course you have to pay extra for it, but the AI feature is that if I go to a call, it takes that audio from the body camera and already does a summary for you on the upload page that just says, hey, this is what happened while you were out there. And what they're doing is making it, you can't just copy and then throw it in a report. You have to actually look at it, make sure that you have to check its accuracy. They actually make it a requirement. You have to physically change that narrative enough before you can copy and paste. They put Easter eggs in there where you have to go in and change it to make it your own, right? Because you have to testify in court that says, I am the one that has this, although it gave you a summary. So it's just those kind of things, and we're just making sure that we're doing it the right way. And again, the whole preventing that copy, just throw it in the app that you have on your phone and then you're copying it over and, that's not the best practice. So this
Well,
gives us-
it even says AI generated content, it shall be treated as a draft
correct.
Correct.
in your procedures.
Yeah, so again, it's just important, I think, to get in front of it, there's probably agencies or officers out there using AI, right, to help them be a better writer or whatnot.
Sure.
But again, I think it's important that, that it is reviewed. And again, that's something we're looking at. We haven't purchased, again, we're working with our camera, essentially Core Force right now, and we like the way that they're doing it, where, like Chief said, it has these, Easter eggs and/or we can mandate the amount of content of which needs to be changed. Like, they showed like a percentage of 20% is kind of what they're seeing agencies go to, but you can move it all the way up to almost 80%. Well, that's, you can do 100%, but then that's pointless. Why am I paying for it if they have to generate 100% of the content? So again, I think it's important to have those checks and balances. One thing, again, that we like about the Core Force AI stuff that, we're looking towards is that you can't copy, you can't even select the page and copy. It won't allow you until, right, you found all the Easter eggs and you've edited it to the, percentage in which we feel is beneficial, right? So we're going there, but again, this is one that we're trying to get out in front of, and again, those things are treated as a draft, because it's important that we're not putting, somebody else's words, AI words out there that we don't know about, because ultimately, right, when it comes down to it, we have to testify what we provided.
Exactly.
So, our officers have to have a working knowledge of what they're putting on paper. And the copy and paste of just anything is not good, because we know it does make mistakes. And you can essentially, completely blow a case, based off of a few words. So
I say kudos to you all for doing that, because that was a very progressive section.
yeah,
actually.
and I think there's an avenue in which it can help. Obviously help us, as well, right? I think we would be dumb to think that, right, this AI stuff cannot help us, whether it's for crime prevention techniques, whether it's, report writing, again, we always speak of our afternoon shift, and they're pretty busy from 2:30 to 10:30 at night, and sometimes those reports stack up. As an officer, I can imagine going back to my car into my computer and going, hey, at least I have 5 summaries, started. I'm going to have to review them and, find the Easter eggs and do this, but, I know I don't have to start from scratch, and I think, that helps build morale, right? It helps, hopefully maybe ease or lighten some of the workload as well. So I think, there's some benefits to the AI. So I think we'd be dumb not to explore those options that are best for us, but it has to be, the right situation too, in which we have those checks and balances on it as well. Let's see.
Any other specific policies we can talk about, or?
Do any of today's chapters involve data retention policies with all this body camera stuff and SWAT camera stuff?
Yeah, there. Let's see, the body one.
Because, people don't quite realize that there's tremendous civil liberties privacy issues with the body cameras. We all know the benefits for both sides, police and civilians. But the other side of it is these cameras are picking up intimate moments, worst moments of people's lives. And what is the data retention policy? This data is living forever in some places. Petabytes of stored police camera video. So are we storing it for a week, a month? I know detectives and police would probably like to have it forever in case we have to go back. But
So what we have to do for every video that we upload, right, there is what we call categorizing it to where you can put specifics on what that video is for. So if it's for a misdemeanor, it'll hold for the extent that a misdemeanor needs to be held anyway, which is, was it 2 years?
200 days.
And then any other videos, they're only held for about 200 days, and then they're just washed from our system anyway, right? So if I stop at a gas station, I have my camera on, and you're having a conversation with just a business owner or employee, that just goes away. We don't retain that forever. We don't have the capacity to do that. But if it is a serious event, obviously, if you mark it as a felony or for a specific situation, then it holds for even longer than that. And then we still kind of, as we embark on this cloud-based storage as well, in the past, we always download our body cameras and put them on a disk and do all that. So we will probably still continue to do that, at least until we know that the cloud-based storage is actually going to stick around. But yeah, we do our best to make sure that we hold it as long as we need to, and then also purge it when we don't need it.
this is an interesting point, because I just learned in the last week or two that, I'm not sure of the name of the act, but federal law, Telecommunications Act of 1986, that electronic media stored on a third-party thing, i.e. the cloud, data is considered abandoned in this federal law after 6 months. Meaning there are no privacy protections, there's no Fourth Amendment protections against the data. When they formulated this law, people weren't using email yet. There were a couple of researchers using email. Nobody imagined we'd have 10 years of our Gmail stored online. But think about, given the surveillance technology that the feds have, again, so this data stored for 200 days, that's 9 months. That breaks that 6-month rule where all of a sudden this private data actually doesn't have any protections. It might be something worth looking into. This is complicated, and it's really legal. But I believe I'm correct about this 1986 law and the 6-month, that electronic media is considered abandoned. Your photos, your documents, your business, everything you've got in your Gmail or any online account. And again, it doesn't sound dangerous until the government is focused its ire on you or is turned malignant against the people. So if our data retention policy keeps this stuff in the open past this point where it becomes fair game, it's a weird little back door for privacy violations. Something to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, just obviously, specifically like you did request, Scott, 423 policies are law enforcement recording devices. The retention period, right, is 190 days by state mandate, right, in which, right, we do for ours are set to 200. Again, there is retention to be extended for law enforcement recording database when the pending criminal action or appeal is not yet completed, or a member of the public requests a video. The video must be obtained for a 2-year period. So, again, those are obviously the practices in which we follow. And then, like Chief Cooney alluded to, for our use of force and/or critical incidents, right? Use of force, pursuits, officer involved, incidents, right? We're putting those on disk as well, right? And storing those, so we have a physical copy as well, not just cloud-based storage.
So when folks involved in an incident request, in a serious incident request their body cam footage, is that made available to them at no cost? I know when this policy was first implemented, we did.
The law is very specific. It depends on the factual circumstances, and even if we can't provide it, we have to show it to them and their attorney. And we're
Okay.
given 2 opportunities to view.
Okay.
So if you do have a very sensitive situation that qualifies for just a viewing, the statute will mandate that it's not released, but they can view it.
Perfect, thank you. And then everybody else has to go through FOIA, and there's the fees, so I know it is very expensive to produce a copy.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive, but it's also, right, there's also a lot of redactions and things that, you know, if it's an extended video, right, that becomes, you know, a lot of work to release it as well, so.
A 20-minute video sometimes can take 3 to 4 hours to redact, depending on what type of call it was and what is shown. And if the juvenile's involved, you're, you know, over-editing it just to make sure that you're not releasing any sensitive information. So it is time-consuming for sure.
Just trying to look back in here. Let me update this. One now. Just trying to think.
What does HR feel about this portion of our workshop?
I think if they're following what the state has mandated, I think that puts us on the right track, because we aren't doing something different than what the state would consider to be legal or authorized.
I'm saying, for us, our duties as a board is, we're not doing your job. We're not second guessing your policies. We're making sure we're in compliance with state laws, local ordinances, protecting from liability, correct?
Well, you'll have to approve the manual.
Yeah.
Okay, so eventually at some point, you guys will be asked to approve the whole manual. So that's why we're pulling it back into workshops, because it's a lot of information, right? And we just didn't want to go, here you guys.
Right.
You know,
This
you
is
didn't
not our
have an
wheelhouse.
opportunity to discuss it and see it well in advance.
Yeah, and again, obviously, right, going through this the first time, I think, you know, obviously, right, we know of a few corrections that we need to make. We'll make it a point to highlight, I would say, a few of the, I would say, deemed more important, right, policies. We'll make sure that we have, you know, a few of those to highlight and touch base on. And then obviously, any review, right, you know, any track changes that I think that we have previously, I think would be important to go back and review those to make sure that we, you know, updated them appropriately, right, and fixed some of those, whether it's grammatical or, you know, the bold, right, the format, you know, and some things like that, make sure those are consistent across the board, you know, as we move forward. Again, I don't think there's, you know, as you do review these things, if there's, you know, something in, we don't have to be done with 1 through 5 today, right? If there's something that, you know, in your review, you know, you want to go back to, I think we can, you know, we're more than willing to do so.
I think what Candace just brought up about making sure that we are in compliance with local ordinances, I don't know how you address that.
Well, it's not going to be so much local ordinance compliance, okay? It's going to be
Just
state
like
and
nothing
federal
crazy.
law for policing aspects, right? So our ordinance speak for themselves. Like, they're very simplistic. And quite honestly, when you look at state and federal law and what they have to do from a search and seizure warrants, that governs it. Ordinance,
Like our state.
okay, so loud noise, you're not even comparing kind of apples to apples. So the Lexipol is that tool that's making sure we're updated with state and federal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do want to mention about the bold versus not being bold. It looks like when it's a main subject, like purpose and scope, and then if it's a subsection, it's not bold. So I think that's where the difference is, to just
Okay.
highlight. When it's bold, it's just, this is the main topic, and then there are subsections underneath that aren't
Okay.
bolded out, so.
We'll take a look at it and see if there's an
Yeah, I just
explanation
didn't know
for
if
it.
there was rhyme
Yeah.
or reason to it. Okay.
At least that's what.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you look here, like, this section's
That
bold.
makes sense.
but then why is
Because
that?
that's 4.1. So that's
Oh,
section
four.
4, and then, yeah.
It was like 3.1.
Okay, now that you're
Subsection of a
I see.
subsection.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the main policy definitions isn't.
Got it.
what the sub-
Yeah, I think you're right, Chief.
Good call. Did anybody have any other questions or comments for this section?
You don't read this all the time.
No.
Lord.
Dave,
It's been a 2-year process.
It really has. And again, I think initially, right, the back and forth with Lexipol, right, was key. Lieutenant Steve Westfall was working hand in hand with them, kind of, right, giving them our content and then, reviewing it back and forth. And then essentially, that was like the first line. And then it was like, essentially the chief's review after that. So, there's been, I would say, now we're at essentially the third line and maybe the final line of review, right? So we've had multiple lines of review, which is great, but it's a lot of content, and I think, getting to this point where, where we have these set in stone and then going forward, and again, I harp the benefits of Lexipol, right, is that they're going to essentially send us, right? These need to be updated. Here's case law in Indiana that indicates that is affecting this specific policy that we've worked with you on, right? So then it becomes just a much easier process to go forward, I think, from here, so.
I would like to highlight, so as we get through the approval process, our officers have the desktop version as well. So when they log into Lexipol, they're going to be shown, we'll probably do it in blocks as well, but they'll get to review each policy, and they actually have to scroll down and click I acknowledge this policy for every one. In the past, we would just do, hey, review this, at a roll call or whatnot, and then they would sign a routing slip that just says, yeah, I acknowledge the policy, where now they have to actually go in and physically see it. So we have some checks and balances there, and again, we can send out, like Chief said earlier, if we need to kick out a training or something about a policy, we can do that, so.
Yeah, and again, kind of the behind it, right, the Lexipol part of it, where it can, again, we talk about these daily training team bulletins, where essentially, right, there's like one line questions, right, just about specific policies. It's just one question, right? It kind of gives you an overview of some things, but then it's like one question, like, did you, true or false, the use of force, has to be reviewed by, the board of commanders type thing, right? So again, it just helps us get, I think, more, of a competent understanding of our policies. I would say one of the benefits that we've seen in the last several years is our promotional process has gone towards more of a, I would say, an individualized process, whereas instead of doing like the old school's, police promotion exam, right, that was like a test that was given to, a standard across the country, right? So now our testing process, again, that we'll be working with the commission on here in the near future. Recently, we've been using a testing organization in which they draft specific questions towards our policies and procedures, right? So they'll meet with our captains, which are our highest merit rank, right? There's no other promotion for them. So they meet with the testing board meets with our captains. What are some points of emphasis? What are some key areas that, supervisors should know and have intimate knowledge about, right? Our potty cam, our use of force, our vehicle pursuit policy. So they work together to formalize specific questions towards Michigan City, which I think when people want to get promoted, you have to study our material then.
Yeah, that
Right?
makes sense.
So then you get better educated on our policies and procedures. So again, that's something that we've seen. Again, I think this is probably if we choose to do so, again, I think this would be the third testing process in a row that we've used this company, which again, I think it just helps us educate our people even more, right? Something they have to study for if they want to get promoted. Well, again, they're educating themselves on our own policies.
Yeah.
Again,
So the officers would have access to this when they're out
Yeah.
beat. So if they had a question about something, they can go into the SOPs or go into this and see that this is how I should handle this
Yep.
situation.
Yep, and then one benefit too is that there's also like a search bar. So if you just had a specific question, right, I'm looking for, domestic, right? I'm on a domestic call, I can just search domestic, it's gonna pull it, it's gonna highlight, anything that has domestic in it, right? Whether it's specific policy, whether it's specific procedure, so I think, again, that, it just makes it easier for them, right? Again, we do have, right, we're one-to-one, every officer has a computer, on patrol, they have them in their cars, they have internet access, and having, obviously, this web-based allows for that, right? We, currently, right, our policies and procedures sit on a drive, right? And currently, post cyber wars here, right, you have to be in the police station on our Wi-Fi network to access those. So again, having that benefit at the scene, or hey, I'm kind of, things have calmed down, man. Let me just gather myself. Is there something else I should be doing here? Officers can easily do that. So. Again, I think we're on the right track. Again, we appreciate obviously all of your patience with this and kind of moving forward. And I think coming in next week again, we'll.
Does that work for everybody? Okay.
So I think.
So the next 2 Mondays, the plan was, and we picked the last Monday of the month just in case we needed to wrap up, but.
So on the agenda for next month is what, 6 through.
Chief, one last question. Lexapro seems like clearly a good, really good thing to me.
Next Monday.
What's the cost? What's the cost of Lexapro?
At 8:30.
And that comes out of your budget, police
Yeah.
budget?
Yes.
Yeah. I can get back with you, but I'll bring those numbers.
6 through 11 is next week.
Just curious. It seems like it's a good investment.
So again, we'll get specifics, but I know the initial upfront, this part of it was quite a bit more than the ongoing, right? So once we get through this, we'll.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And again, but it's also using their team of lawyers and whatnot, right, to help build this and make sure we have a great solid foundation in which we're in compliance, both, state and federal.
We also get access to their Police One website, which is all a bunch of training videos and content that we can push out to officers that covers everything under the sun and will relate back to our policy as well. So another benefit of that.
I think we just approved that this year, didn't we?
So this year was for fire, I think. Fire is getting on board as well, right? So they're in the start now.
Yeah, they're in the process of putting their manual together. So
Correct.
You've got that.
Yeah.
That'll be coming
And
too.
then to make it even better, you're gonna have the entire city manual that's being looked at too. So it's the year of the manual.
All in 1 year?
Yeah.
It's about time.
They're all
It really
like
is.
that.
It's, again,
Well, I imagine your guys's, it changes all the time.
yeah, there's always updates. And again, I think, we're not, I'm not a case law expert by any means, but, if somebody sends me some case law, okay, I see the practical application in it, but again, how does it affect me, right, in my policies? It's a different seat being up here than on the street, right? We have to look out for, everybody, right? And make sure that everybody is current and everybody understands, because again, whether we know it or not, right, this case law that happened, down south in southern Indiana, it affects us. It could affect us.
Right.
And it's important that we stay current on it. So again, having a team of lawyers working essentially side by side with us helps.
Sounds good. Well, if there's no more questions, comments. All right, we will adjourn and be back next week for 6 through 11. Same time, same place.
Oh, cool kids.